Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Thursday, June the 13th, 2024. Well, we've been talking about the book of Revelation this week. I had some kind of basic introductory kinds of things the last couple of days. Today I want to talk about who wrote the book of Revelation, or at least who we think wrote it, and we really don't know for sure, as we'll find out in a moment. What I want to do in order to do that is to kind of share some of the insights written by Dr. Marco Marina, who asked the question, of course, who wrote the book of Revelation? Again, it's this fantastical account, as I was talking about the last couple of days, so the visions and surreal imagery and beasts and angels and heavenly battles and cosmic cataclysms, depicting a world, as he writes, teetering on the brink of ultimate transformation. But who, he asks, is the mastermind behind this apocalyptic narrative? Was it the Apostle John, a prophet, or an early Christian writer seeking to convey profound spiritual truths? Well, according to the church's prevailing theory down through the centuries, not 100%, but by and large, the author of the book of Revelation was believed to be John, the Apostle John, one of Christ's disciples and then apostles. The earliest evidence, external evidence for that, goes back to the 2nd century and comes from Justin Martyr. And this theory was accepted later by other 2nd and 3rd century church writers such as Irenaeus and Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria. In other words, the traditional conclusion was that the Apostle John wrote both the Gospel of John and Revelation. Some have added in there the 3 letters, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John as well. Well, how old was he if he wrote it, when he wrote it? Since John was believed to be among Jesus' youngest disciples, that would help, because the book of Revelation was written at the end of the 1st century, which means that if he did write it, he would have been quite old. Again, emphasis on if. But modern scholarship casts a lot of severe doubts on this traditional theory. Because unlike the New Testament Gospels, for instance, the authorship of Revelation sparked serious controversies within the church as early as the 3rd century, even though this prevailing idea that the Apostle John wrote it, even as early as the 3rd century, that was called into question. The main problem was that the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation differ considerably in style and also in theology itself. So how could it be that the same person wrote them both? In the middle of the 3rd century, Alexandrian Bishop Dionysius raised further objections, says Marcos. He emphasized in one of his letters, by the phraseology also we can measure the difference between the Gospel and Epistle and Revelation. The first two are written not only without any blunders in the use of Greek, but with remarkable skill regarding diction, logical thought, and orderly expression. Well, as it turns out, modern scholarship concurs with that bishop's analysis. Most scholars today attribute the book of Revelation and the gospel to different authors, neither of which was the Apostle John. So who wrote the book of Revelation? The external evidence does not support there being the same author for both the gospel and the book of Revelation. What about the internal evidence? Well, Dr. Bart Ehrman, in his book, Historical Introduction to Early Christian Writings, points out that almost all the ancient apocalypses were written pseudonymously in the name of a famous person from the past. However, the book of Revelation is a rare exception because the author of Revelation actually identifies himself as John. Moreover, the author, though, doesn't place the composition of his book centuries in the past. Instead, John puts this narrative in his own time. He names the intended recipients of his visions, the 7 churches in Asia, and he provides us with some information about himself. He is the brother of these Christians in Asia. He relates to their hardships. He also composes his message while situated on the island of Patmos, which is on the western coast of Asia Minor, and that's why he is often called John of Patmos. Unfortunately, given his readers' familiarity with him, he doesn't say anything really more about his identity. But he never claims to be Jesus' apostle. Quite the contrary. Throughout the narrative, John indicates that he was not one of the 12 apostles. So based on everything we know about the Apostle John, it is doubtful that he could have been the author of Revelation. Modern research indicates that only a tiny percentage, 5 to 10% of individuals in ancient times were literate, typically belonging to the wealthy upper class with access to education, fact which cast doubt on most of the traditional authors of the New Testament, except Paul, who was, as we know, well educated. So the probability of an uneducated, poor Galilean fisherman like the Apostle John being educated was extremely low. And additionally, John is explicitly called by a Greek word in Acts 4:13, which basically means that he was illiterate. So who wrote the book of Revelation? The internal evidence does not support the same author for the gospel and Revelation either. But there is a little bit we can say about him. John of Patmos appears to have been a regional spiritual leader and a prophet. He likely had a following of students due to his charismatic leadership style. However, his Greek is very poor. He makes a lot of grammatical mistakes. His sentence structures are not sophisticated at all. So who wrote the book of Revelation? Well, this much we do know. The author was John of Patmos, not to be confused, however, with the Apostle John. And I think I mispronounced the doctor's name, the historian's name. It's Marco Marina. And I thank him for his insights that I wanted to pass along to you today about the writer of the book of Revelation. Don't know a whole lot. Pretty much know that it's not the Apostle John. It's someone named John, a contemporary of those times in which it was written into the first century, writing from the island of Patmos, which was a penal colony, and seemed to have, some direct insight as to what was going on, and was able to then write and speak to the Christians of that day, offering them some hope and comfort and promise and strength in difficult times. Well, we'll talk a little bit about in the next couple of days, the last couple of days, we'll talk a little bit more about, how books got in and how books got left out of the Bible. It's a fascinating story. I can't share but just a little bit of it, but I want to pass along a little bit of that as well. So have a great day today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.